Yeah. As I got another rhyme, another rhythm for y'all to listen. I'm never quitting on my mission. I'ma roll with what I'm giving. Got some ambition, this new edition, filling positions. Looking at the void in myself and feeling what's missing. Better watch the way you going, better go in the right direction. In the moment you stressing, but you gon' be counting blessings. And I know that for certain. Keep on working, open curtains, haters swerving, cause they ain't ready for your final version. Whoa. I'm never gonna give up. Fall down, I just gotta get up, yeah. Cause this is my road. Lights, camera, action, I'm ready to go. I'm never gonna give up. Fall down, I just gotta get up, yeah. Yeah, this is my road. Lights, camera, action, I'm ready to go. Way too long, we faced them storms. Now you gon' face the dawn you waited for. I said from night to dawn, I right my wrongs alone. In competition with warnings, ice galore. Now I'm running toward them highlights. I'm finished being a quitter, but little by little, they joking, telling some riddles. Now I'm in my section, ain't willing to give up. Know you getting knocked down, but you gotta get up.
You're listening to the Tom Ficklin Show on WNHHLP 103.5 FM, your home for community radio. It's on you, Tom.
Oh, it's on me? We're live, Harry?
Yeah, we're live.
Okay, we're live, everybody. And actually, we're talking about today, this is the Tom Ficklin Show. What does it mean to be alive and to resurrect and revive and to kind of just express your being, regardless of how you might see your ideological pursuits or even how you define yourself or even that perpetual search for meaning. This is Holy Week for some people. For me, every day is a Holy Week. Every day is a eternal blessing. Every day is kind of a present in terms of the reality of this temporal existence, but also it's a present in terms of the gift that might be the gift and gifts that might be awaiting us and gifts that we might be able to share with people. I have today Minister and Reverend Kevin Staton, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. We're going to talk about his current journey. We're going to talk about his affiliation with the churches. We're going to talk about his theological education in Chicago, and Kevin's also a librarian, also a history teacher, and just someone that's been and a father, and someone that's been really concerned in my mind with what does life mean for us, for Black people, for white people, for all people, as well as for generations, for young folks. You go to his Facebook page, you'll see him and his daughter up on the Facebook page like ridiculous. She's going to really appreciate Kevin just seeing the investment of a fatherhood and a parent, and that's kind of an example too. But at any rate, Kevin Staton is here with us on the Tom Ficklin Show. Kevin, good to see you, man.
Great to see you, Tom.
Share a little bit. Let me talk a little slower now about some of the topics that we're going to unpack. And I want to preface it, folks, by don't be offended by anything that Kevin might want to say, and also be, I think, respectful and embrace that we all are looking for our path in life. I wouldn't say some of us have received the call, some of us have paid up those bills, some of us understand that the call is kind of free, but some of us are still kind of searching for what our identity formation might be. And Kevin is a theological student. He's been an assistant minister at churches in Waterbury, churches here in New Haven, churches in Milford. So he comes from a standpoint that's really strong and profound. And I was really pleased and amazed and also blessed and appreciative that he's willing to kind of talk about some hard issues in terms of what the religious experience is for some, what it might be for others, way he sees religious behavior, and also how religion practices can infuse meaning in your life, either for the short term, long term, for yourself or for others. So, Kevin, some of the topics we're going to unpack today include.
Well, we're going to deal with actually some of the things that are taboo among the church, and topics that we really don't talk about. And the far-reaching impact is this emerging of a group called the Nuns, N-O-N-E-S.
Mm-hmm.
And they're one of the fastest growing groups, and they're people with no religious affiliation whatsoever. So, and so it's based on actual research from the Gallup poll that I'll share, and the Pew Center, which does this kind of research all the time. So these are legitimate institutions, and it deals with the fact that, especially among the Protestant church, Protestant church has taken a significant hit and a drop-off in membership. And we're going to deal with that and deal with different aspects of the church and how that impacts this drop in membership. So whether it's topics around family, topics around, politics, and just like general well-being for people, that things that this younger group comes to church looking for. They're more inquisitive. You know, it's like that saying, you know, religious people do what they're told and people of faith will do what's right. You know, so there's this difference. So they're coming in and they have these questions, and people are using these models that are, you know, are antiquated. You know, we're not saying that God necessarily changes. You know, this, you know, we always say Jesus Christ the same yesterday, now, and forever. But, you know, these approaches and not answering questions, you know, not being willing to have like some of these hard discussions. You know, it pushes especially this younger generation away.
So tease us a little bit more concretely. Again, you're listening to the Tom Ficklin Show, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you're saying that there's the church practices. If a young person goes to church, he or she may just be turned off. And so what would turn them on and what's turning them off?
Well, if you take something like politics, okay, one of the things that we need to do, that groups like evangelicals, so white evangelicals are the largest supporters of the current president. You know, around anywhere from 70 to 80%.
Support 145th.
To support him. And so there needs to be conversations about why do they support them, what exactly do they believe, and especially in, you know, churches of people of color, are you drawing a distinction? If the majority of our African American Protestants are not voting for this man, then what is it about him and his policies that you don't believe, you know, or that you feel are in conflict? You know,
there should be more discussion in the church about politics. Right.
Okay. And you know, not treating it as something, oh, we can't talk about. It's not so much supporting a candidate, but, you know, common sense would tell you that, all right, you know, if we look at our doctrine, our Bible, you know, when Jesus healed people, you know, there wasn't somebody coming around, you know, collecting money. You know, it wasn't a charge. You know, the woman touches the hem of his garment. He's like, hey, you know, that'll be 1,000 shekels.
Don't have to buy a handkerchief that has oils on it or anything.
You know, it doesn't work that way. So that's socialized medicine. You know, I mean, so there are things within our doctrine that we can have these theological discussions about that give people a depth of understanding, that when you have these conversations, you know, you can, sometimes people can be very judgmental and very dismissive. And that's what pushes people away.
But aren't there a lot of churches doing external ministry and foreign ministry, and kind of going to Haiti and going to other places to kind of spread the word and donate food and help construct buildings?
They are. I mean, there are plenty of churches that go around and do that. But for me, specifically, with a focus on my research, and it really has to do with my my thesis around my MDiv. Which
MDiv is Masters of Divinity that you're in the process of earning from Chicago Theological
Seminary. Yeah, and my focus centers around the evolution of the Black church post Dr. King. So there's this window of time where, and I lived it. And what I learned a lot was just from talking to my own family, is there's a connection. You put these pieces together concerning the church, and there's this connection with this migration. And I'm just talking about New Haven, Connecticut. Just people that come here in the 60s and 70s. You know, it's still part of that great migration. You know, I think was it Isabel Wilkerson? Warmth Above Her Sons. Yeah, her book, she talks about it. But there was another book I had to read called Remembering Jim Crow. And that book talked about life in the segregated South. And so I called my mother and my aunt. Shout out to Aunt Yvonne.
All right.
Yeah. And we sat and we had breakfast and we talked about what it was like down there and to move up here. And the reason why I wanted to talk to them and get their perspective is it brings clarity about church life. Because now,
so what's unclear now?
Right. Well, what happens is you look at how as we know, the church was a central part of the community. You know, it still is.
Yes.
You know, especially African American communities, other communities as well. But especially in the segregated South, that was your main institution.
Yes.
So you come north, and we're talking about late 60s, early 70s. I didn't even know my family had come up here in the late 60s. Work. You know, there were all as you know, there are all these places. If you look at New Haven history, you know, anybody that's lived here can talk to you about, you know, American Linen, and Winchester and, and all these places where people come from the South. You come up, you're making a great living, and church is still this major part, of your life.
But again, help me to visualize and see it, because I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm hearing that there's been a disconnect between the role of the church in particularly people's lives that are no longer going. So you're saying there's a lack of magnetism, there's a lack of appeal, there's a lack of programming interest. What's the reason for the disconnect?
I definitely wouldn't say it was solely the fall of the church. This is a generation that's inundated with information just off of their phones alone.
Yes.
So what happens is you have people that get all this information, but it's not necessarily the right information. So
now got to give me an example, Kev.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you deal with all this fake news.
Okay.
So you get these different perspectives about the church.
Okay.
And
what are some of the myths or lies about the church that you want to correct? This is your time. We got 35 minutes to lay it out.
Yeah. All right. We're gonna lay it out. One of the things that you see a lot of is this view of churches not being concerned with family and family life.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things I look at is looking at churches and how they're structured in terms of the amount of time they require of people. So I'll give you a prime example.
Okay.
My former pastor, Larry Green Sr. at Grace Baptist.
Mm-hmm. Grace Baptist,
awesome.
great Grace Baptist in Milford, not to be confused with Grace Baptist in Norwalk.
This is in Waterbury. He's in Waterbury.
Waterbury, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So we looked at an old program from a church, and it has something every single day, which, that's great for the life of the community and whatnot. But, there still has to be time built in for things like parent-teacher conferences, helping your child with their homework, just regular family time, the stuff you talk about with me and my daughter. And you get into this whole thing where you have people with families, and they're like, well, look, I do things with my family. My family is my children are a central part of my life, and they view the church as like it's going to take away, from that.
Again, you're listening to the Tom Ficklin Show, and Kevin Staton is with us. Reverend Kevin Staton and Minister Kevin Staton, and I use those two terms, and he'll explain why one might be more of a stretch of his imagination, but he is a licensed minister and has been an assistant minister at several churches. So on the, I'm still trying to get a feel for. Are you saying that churches take some church activities in their routine and traditional behaviors conflict with time for parents to be parents?
Oh yes. A prime example. I won't name it, but I was a kid, and my cousins laugh at this story now. It wasn't funny then, but we had this thing. It was called a shut-in, and it was done. I think it was done around Christmas time till New Year's Eve. The shut-in is you actually live at the church, like you got your pillowcase and your pillow and I mean, so you stay there. So they decided that they were going to have this at the time. Now we were kids. I was a kid. I'm in maybe middle school. Okay. At the time.
You grew up here in New Haven.
Right. So I got to stay here. I got to stay at church over my winter break, so I don't get a chance to even open my presents. So I go home, and my grandmother told my cousin, she said, "Look, don't say anything to Kevin about this. You better leave him alone." So my cousins sit, they wait quietly and patiently, and they wait till grandma walks out of the room, and they fall out laughing because they're like, I can't believe you have to go to church and you don't even get to like open your presents, and there's this thing where you have these situations where people, they want to be so religious and they don't take into account that, these are kids and you have to have things for kids to do. And so there were subjects that we never talked about that were very important. Not just, promoting abstinence. If you're going to promote abstinence and tell teenagers just don't do it or don't feel this way, then you should have conversations with kids about love and relationships and what that means, what it means to have a functional relationship with another person. If the church, if you're not having those conversations, then you're leaving a void. And it basically if I'm a parent, I'm looking at you like, I want to bring my child here, but I want my child to still have a positive and productive experience. And yes, are those conversations that I need to have with my child as a parent? Yes, but within the context of religion, if my religious life is going to take precedence, then we have to talk about those within the context of our faith and what we believe.
And Sunday school could perhaps be a remedy from your standpoint if there was a
definitely. I always joke that I enjoyed, in some instances I enjoy Bible study more than church, because you actually got to pick things apart and actually talk about and discuss things. That's why my focus is more academic now.
And again, the nature of your thesis is on what again?
It's basically on Black family and life, and it deals with post King.
Okay.
Right after Dr. King, there's a void, and you have the shift
from social activism
right to almost like I remember a pastor said this to me a while ago. It was like a social service shift, and I was fortunate enough to meet with, before he passed away, God rest his soul, Dr. James Cone, up at Union Theological Seminary in New York.
Yes.
And we sat down. It was one of those things where he talked and all I did was listen.
Yes.
You know, but he kind of walked me through, and he actually told me what direction to go in terms of my research.
So when you mentioned Dr. James Cone and Black liberation theology, that's something that pertains, that resonates with you?
Oh, yes. Yeah, because he really broke down like, all right, this is where you should start and this is where you should look. And one of the things they were telling me was that you don't want to go too far back. If you go back to like Reverend Ike, and
Daddy Grace,
that's he's like, that's World War II. He said, if you're just talking about this time period after Dr. King dies and the shift, and it really does relate to, you have all these people migrating here, and anybody listening would know that was around in the 80s. You saw this boom, in terms of churches, and church membership. And what you have the people that migrated here. By now they've become somewhat established, and they're kids.
Okay, so let's, again, you're listening to the Tom Ficklin Show, and we're jumping around a little bit, but it's a deliberate going from, if not pillar to post, but from a variety of perspectives on what is the institutional of the church mean, what is your institution of your family life as an institution, and also I'm using the term institution as a verb here. Where do you migrate, either when you even have relocated, in terms of, do you migrate to Netflix, do you migrate to church or this, do you migrate to Facebook? Because all these kind of venues and avenues for your attention are really competing with one another. Kevin, tell me why it matters. Why does it matter if the church population, the way you define it, is declining? Why is that of significance?
Several reasons. I think number one is the political nature and the prominence of the evangelical.
So to offset the right-wing Christians and their power over American ethos and politics?
Right. And so when you can't allow them to become the face of, basically Protestant religion. So, because that's where they mainly come out. So if you allow that to happen and you don't give a clear definition of what you believe, especially, our relationship to, not just civil rights, but social justice in general, and all its aspects, human rights, used to be the thing that people drew on, where the church was a political hub where they would talk about, during the announcements, they would talk about, well, the NAACP is having a meeting, at this time, and we're planning a protest of such and such at this time. I mean, so it was active, and I tell people, evangelicals do that all the time.
Yes. So comment, if you would, on say Reverend Barber and the Moral Mondays and his movement. Do you see that to be something that's advantageous, something that's growing, something we should pay more attention to?
I think it is powerful because he's coming out of North Carolina, and one of the things people don't know with North Carolina is, if you're talking about, this is one of the topics I think churches should have a conversation about is voter suppression. And for North Carolina, the voter suppression is so prominent.
Yes.
You know, in terms of, there's a book called Give Us the Ballot. Came out a few years ago. In fact, he was here. The author was here at Yale. He gave a talk, and it was right before the election. And he talked about how the bus lines were removed, that people could take the bus, you know, in areas, I believe it was like Durham. But if you're not having these conversations about voter suppression, if they're not taking place, like I said, in the church should be a political hub. People will say, no, it shouldn't. We shouldn't talk about politics. Well, you know, these are things that are, voter suppression directly affects your life because it affects how you get funded. And, you know, you might think it doesn't affect you directly, but it does, because it affects the people in your congregation. You know, healthcare affects the people in your congregation.
Yes.
So if you're not having conversations about that, it's the same thing with domestic terrorism.
Okay, let's talk about that.
You know, you know, the silence is astounding to me. You know, where we have constant instances where, you know, people are either stockpiling weapons, or, you know, instances where people actually get murdered. So, you know, you want to know, you know, in a place like South Carolina, after Dylann Roof goes in and executes 9 people, you know, what are we doing in terms of the church? Think about in Kentucky, the man who killed the grandfather who was getting his son's school project, and then shot another black woman in the parking lot. He tried to go to a church first.
So for people that, again, you listen to the Tom Ficklin Show, and I'm pushing back to Kevin for a little bit, because this is such an important and rich discussion, because, again, how we perceive 2019 and moving forward in terms of our political institutions, our religious institutions, our school institutions, our family as an institution, and also the fracturing and diminution of many of those institutions. So you're aware of the argument, however, that some theologians will say that we have to save, the person has to be saved first before he or she can be an effective instrument of change.
I'm not saying that you don't focus on that, but you get into this whole thing of, I call it, with faith, there's faith with a capital F, and there's faith with a small f.
And so faith without works is
dead.
You're saying is dead, if not non-existent.
But people get capital F faith, which is your faith in God, confused with small f faith, which has to do with faith in terms of people. And, you know, if we're operating in terms of capital F faith, then yes, there's certain, you focus on your relationship, your introspective, your own personal spiritual development. But now when we talk about dealing with people, you know, people, that's a whole different thing. And when we're dealing with people, you have to have mechanisms in place to not only protect yourself, but, you know, but deal with, like, the reality of just everyday life.
Okay, so you firmly believe that the church should be a political an instrument for political change, an instrument for policy change, an instrument for self-development, and an instrument for personal transformation.
And the thing is, Tom, that's what has been that.
Okay,
you know, it's not that. So let me something new.
Let me drill down a little bit, because you are licensed and you have worked for several years in Community Baptist and Grace Baptist in Waterbury, and you're now Chicago Theological Chicago Theological Seminary. This today through Sunday, it's kind of people call, or yesterday through Sunday call people, this is what Holy Week, and separate from the part that it changes each year, and that's a separate discussion. I'm not sure how something so precious can be subject to man's manipulation, but that's a different discussion.
Right.
But when Jesus, for you, I think it's fair to ask this question. So Jesus is on the cross, and who's on the right and who's on the left?
2 thieves.
And what does he say to them?
Well, one is like, you know, basically, if you're the Son of God, you know, let yourself down. And then the other one just says, you know, look, he hasn't done anything. He recognized the innocent, and, you know, and he just says, remember me. So
in the context of what we're talking about, and in terms of mass incarceration, kind of, you want to elaborate on that a little bit? Because you have thieves, right, juxtaposed in this historical narrative, depending on whether you believe it or not.
Right.
So these stories are kind of profound in terms of just the in my mind the direction and the creation of even if you believe this is the total myth. It is kind of fascinating when you have the Son of God or somebody that's really pure, if you will, and then they have thieves on his right and left also
and they picked a criminal over him, Barabbas. So I mean,
so what does it say about criminality and white collar crime and black collar crime and policy and incarceration?
Once again, I'm not saying that it's part of a sermon, you know, in the church, because you know the sermon you're trying to get people to give their lives.
Okay.
Trying, you know, in a Christian church.
But for what reason?
That's the emphasis. Right. But that's the whole thing. Is we don't go enough into the reasoning behind it. So
we got 15 minutes to go to the reason, or at least for 5.
Okay.
Tease us.
No. So you get into this thing where I can only speak for myself.
Absolutely. But you're the only one. Harry's not going to join, and I guarantee you, Harry is not going to help me out on this. I guarantee it.
When one of the things
you've given your life for Christ, why?
Well, one of the things is that you start to appreciate this whole concept of God's image.
Okay.
And once you start to walk in that image,
yes,
that image takes on other forms of your life.
Okay.
So I'll give you an example.
Please.
When you start, it's like my relationship with my daughter.
Indeed.
So, I didn't have a father. You know, I have a father, but you know, my parents separated when I was 4. So growing up here, you know, I didn't have a father because he was in North Carolina. So I tell people, you know, we back and forth, you know, until I was around 8.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know what it's like contextually to have your father say, I love you, have your father say, I'm proud of you. I don't have any idea what that's like because I was so young. So when you tap into God's image and when you understand God's image for you, you trust God. This is where the capital F faith.
Okay.
You trust God to give you an image of what fatherhood should be.
Yes.
So for me, it became a thing where I wasn't going to use that as an excuse, where I was going to basically be everything I didn't have. So
yes.
I don't miss parent conferences. I don't miss, you know, every dance recital, every band performance, every activity. You know, my daughter and I go on vacations, you know, where it's just she and her father, and I'm talking about like 2-week vacation, you know, where we go away and it's just her and her father, because I wanted to make sure that she grew up understanding, you know, what it was like to have a father that loves her. And it's because I looked at, you know, through Christ, I looked at what God's image of what a father, even though I had no idea.
Yes.
But I trusted God that God would give me an idea of how to do it.
And I appreciate you being that transparent. And I'm drilling down on you because, you know, you're a good buddy and you're going to be on this show again. And we're going to talk about some of the things that the church is not doing, or more importantly, what you'd like to see them do from a Sunday experience, a 24/7 experience, a Monday through Saturday, and then Sunday experience. But for you, since you're committed to the importance of the church, correct?
Right.
I mean, you're studying. Right. You've been there before. You worked in churches. You see it to be part of your existence. Is that fair to say?
Right.
So for 5 years from now, if I ask you to come back, you'll still be talking about your involvement in the church at some level.
Right.
So you have committed yourself to see the image and see the power of the church and the power of religion and the power of Jesus, because why? Personally,
you know, it's interesting because you get into this one of the things with seminary is a lot of the people in seminary aren't necessarily Christian.
Yes. I'm not talking about I'm talking about you. I want to hear from you.
No, I'm getting to me.
Because sometime today, sometime tomorrow.
Yeah,
we only have like 10 more minutes.
No, okay. Because what happens is when you're dealing with people who are either atheists or agnostic, and you have to define yourself. What it is for me.
What it is for you
is I tell people, Jesus Christ is as real to me as this table, and as this table we have our hands on. So when I'm dealing with somebody that's an atheist and agnostic, and they're trying to tell me Jesus Christ isn't real, I'm looking at them and I'm like, your hands are on the table just like mine.
All right. So he's real for you, and what does he or she enable you to do because of that reality?
Well, that's the whole thing. That whole thing with image. Is trying to seek God's image for your life because it translates into all these different aspects of life.
Okay.
So
give me 2 or 3 examples.
I'll give you an example. I always joke with people. I've had to counsel people that were going through they had lost somebody, a family member.
Yes.
And I told them that one of the things you have to understand is there's your family and then there's relatives. There are people that you're related to. And God's image, understanding God's image helps you define that. Okay. Because your family's there to support you. They're here to, all right, how are we going to deal with this? And this relatives show up and relatives are like, what's going to happen with his car? What's going to happen with his clothes?
When there's a funeral. Yeah.
When do we eat?
All right. You listen to the Tom Ficklin Show, and Kevin Staton is with us. And I'm enjoying being halfway joking, halfway serious with Kevin. And he's such a fluid personality and a God-centered personality. I think Kevin, everyone can have their own interpretation of God. William James talks about the variety of religious experience, but I so enjoy talking with you where I can kid and probe. Because again, Kevin will give his authenticity, his story, his belief, and I think that's all if we can just begin to share that with one-to-one. So you may be talking to me as an atheist, you may not know that I might be an atheist, or I might be, but that doesn't matter. We can still commune, to use that expression, because we all, to some degree, we all have our blind spots. You received the call in your mind when 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, your conversion experience. How would you identify that?
I think 1999 I was like, okay, I really need to change. And I realized that it wasn't going to be, I couldn't change. And it
so
was
it's a
really,
volunteer abdication of your submission.
It's submission. It really is, and once again, you have a respect for other people of faith, because people that, practice Islam will tell you it's about submission. So, you submit and you say, okay, now that I'm submitting, it really is this whole thing of humility. And that's another thing. Like when I was under Pastor Green at Grace Baptist, I was associate minister
in Waterbury.
In Waterbury, his humility was, I never met anybody that humble, where you met him and you knew this was somebody you could trust with your life. Like you knew that whatever you talked to him about, there was no agenda. His agenda was, to basically make sure you were okay.
Well, all right.
And when I took pastoral counseling in seminary, one of the things they talked about was that when you're counseling somebody, you don't judge or project them. That's one of the worst things you can do. It's really a journey, and you all come to a consensus that, all right, how are we going to make it to the other side? So that deals with whether it's addiction, whether it's abuse, that's the word. And that's what happens sometimes. People go to church and you're getting judged, instead of, I'm here because I recognize there might be a problem.
We've talked a little bit prior to the show and I want you to kind of elaborate perhaps on it, Kevin, where sometimes the church experience of the ecstatic moment can sometimes offset what needs to take place after the service is over.
That's huge. I tell people all the time, Jesus taught. And there's a reason why Jesus taught, because when you taught something, it stays with you. So 2 + 2 is always going to be 4 because you taught that. So he taught the disciples so they could carry on the work. I tell you, he taught, like the teaching part, you actually have to know, something about your faith. I was like, if you're just, foaming at the mouth and flopping around, that's great. But at the end of the day, you still have to have some kind of sound teaching, to go along with that, because how can you talk to somebody about your faith if you don't really know anything? And how do you know if you don't take time to learn? The Bible says, tells you to study, to show yourself approved, a workman that can, rightly divine, the scriptures. I mean, it's just, the truth is just, you have to know it. And the thing is, with these growing groups, you have of people that are leaving the church, people realize when, you're not only are you not practicing what you preach, but you don't know.
Well, again, does it come back? Again, I want to ask the question, Kevin. Just because people might leave a certain situation, that doesn't mean that they won't find another one. But but before we go there, you just kind of intrigued me with. I do a lot of marketing and media, public relations stuff, and it's amazed me over the last 10 years, but particularly over the last 5 years, where everyone is talking about the impact of story. The advertising agencies. There was an event at the School of Public Health at Yale on storytelling to help understand a person's medical history. There are storytelling seminars and events at Stetson Library and Concat just going on like crazy. But weren't the parables stories?
It was always it's always a teachable lesson.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like take your pick. There's one after the other.
Indeed.
I'll never forget. Right before he retired, Pastor Green preached. It was out of Luke, and it was on the prodigal son.
Mm-hmm.
So what he preached, it was called Missing Thanksgiving.
Mm.
And what he preached about, and I told him that was to me, because he was kind of talking to ministers and people in ministry.
All right.
And what it was about was how when the prodigal son, for people that don't know the parable, a father has two sons. One leaves home, goes out into the city and gets involved in all kind of, unclean living.
But the bling bling
comes
life.
home. Right.
Bling bling.
He comes home, and his father's so glad to see him. And the other son, who never left, who was always there, is upset that he's not being celebrated because he was always there.
Mm-hmm.
So what Pastor Green talked about was, he said, what you can do sometimes is you can focus so much on somebody else's life that you become ungrateful. And you miss like those wonderful moments in your life. So it was like with me and fatherhood. I used to have a moment sometimes when I would be pushing my daughter on the swings.
Yes.
And she would be like, "Are you okay, Daddy?" I was like, because I never knew it was like to have my father push me on the swing. You know what I mean? It was like, and you make peace with that.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because you focus on being the person you should be. So you don't carry around, any resentment or anything like that.
I don't mean to interrupt. There's so much you're lifting up. As we have maybe 7 or 8 minutes, Kevin. Let's shift for a second and chat and share with folks, because again, I want to be very respectful of your being licensed, very respectful of your academic training. People should know that also you're a history teacher and also a librarian, so you deal with the sacred and the secular and stories and parables. It's part of your academic training, but also part of your emotional training and your emotional commitment. But talk for a second. What would you say to some single mothers that might be trying to raise their son or daughters, for them not to feel guilty or depressed, and that they may not have a significant other? But what would you say as a line of encouragement to a single mother as she has to maybe buy clothes this week, or boil the eggs, or whatever the case might be, or just even think about her mother that might be dead, or whatever the case might be?
Once again, it goes into that whole concept of God's image. And being a parent, being single. One of the things that I found is, just in terms of my interaction with people, we were talking earlier informally about, the whole dating scene. And one of the things that transfers into my life is, as a single parent, I look at someone as, how you talk to me and how you treat me is how you'll potentially treat my child. And so that governs my decision making, where I have basically a zero tolerance policy for dysfunction.
We all have kind of warts and need to be. We all need healing now, Kevin. None of us are perfect.
I get that nobody's perfect.
Okay, you get that. All right.
There's a line.
There's a line.
We don't cross.
There's a list.
Yeah.
There's a list.
I live in the real world. This ain't a Medea movie.
But you're still open. You're still open.
I'm still open.
All right. So your number. You want to share your number? You want to share your number for people to reach out to you? You're still on the hunt, because she may need, who knows. But for a single mother, what would you tell her?
I would say that there's a couple of things that the biggest thing I think is honesty. Honesty, because my daughter feels like she can communicate. I'll give you a prime example.
Okay.
She almost caused me to have a car accident because I was driving and she said, "Daddy, how do you know when you're in love?" I freeze up. But I realize in that moment she trusts me. And it's very important, my answer right now, because she trusts her father, you know, in how she's feeling about relationships. So I didn't go, who is it? And nope. I said, okay. I said, this is what you need to do, sweetie. I said, if you can remember this, this will carry you through the rest of your life. I said, how you feel about a person is not as important as how they're treating you. Because how they treat you lets you know how they feel about you. You can love them. You can get butterflies. You know, that in the old days, we would write the person's name on our notebook and all that. You can feel however you want to feel, how they feel about you. I told students that I was like, if you're texting them and they never text you back, you pretty much need, that's pretty much the friend zone.
As we kind of wind down, this is the Tom Ficklin Show, and to all of you that are celebrating Holy Week and Passover and just Ramadan, whatever your passion and belief in life, I guess really encourage you. Kevin, I want to give you the chance for actually 2 minutes to kind of take a moment and talk, if you want to, about the love of God or the love of Jesus and what you want people to kind of remember, think about, and actually embrace and or explore if they have kind of a lack of belief in that possibility. So this is the chance. Again, I don't do that many shows on this topic, but I was just so pleased to kind of have you come in on this Monday. So as we kind of conclude, just your perception of what the love of God means, the love of Jesus means, and how do you embrace and share share that love and be inspired by it?
I think going into, you know, Resurrection Sunday, this is, you know, for Christians, this is the fulfillment of a covenant. This is it. You know, this is like your high holy day. And people need to reflect on how we behave that day and how people that may not have the same faith that we have, how they watch you reflect on this day and what it means for you. You know, I tell people, I get it. It's great that for some folks, this might be, you know, their one time to go to church.
Get dressed and dress up. Yeah.
You know, coming up. But for churches, it becomes this thing of, what do you have in place that if somebody looks at your program, it opens up your church program and says, oh, they're doing this. Maybe I should come back. Maybe I can come back. Maybe we're having something on fatherhood that I can come back and be a part of that conversation. Maybe we're having something on financial literacy. You know, oh, I can come back and, you know, and learn more about this. I mean, you know, maybe we're having something on, you know, activism and things that are going on in our community and how that's going to impact us. That's in the and you look down, you go, oh, you know, oh, wow, they're doing that. I mean, and like I said, it's not that churches don't do it. Some do. But in terms of, you know, this millennial group that's dropping off, because if you look at the numbers, and I really hope people do, it's on the Pew Center. Yes. They can see a direct correlation between the drop in the Protestant church and the numbers going up among people that classify themselves as no religious affiliation. There's a direct relation. So it really is going into Easter Sunday. It's like, okay, you know, how do I reflect, you know, that love of God in just my everyday interactions with folks? Yes, indeed. You know, whether in my family, in my community, on the job. How does it come out?
Excellent. Kevin, thank you so much for kind of being here. I know this is your vacation week, and you're going to hear more from Kevin from time to time over the next 9 months. I'll be kind of traveling myself, and I've asked Kevin to kind of host a show for me, and he's willingly agreed to do that. Have you not?
Sure. I'm all in. I'm all in.
And you got to promise to be nice to Harry and Paul and all the folks here at WNHH. And Harry and Paul, thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for listening. We'll be back next Monday. And again, Holy Week, Holy Day, Holy Moment, Holy Second. Just kind of embrace the fact that we all can become a whole. And I really kind of salute all of you that are on the search. I'm certainly on the search, and I know you are too, because there are rewards. You can define your rewards in a variety of ways. But there are rewards, not necessarily only monetary, but you got to understand where the wealth really resides. It's not just in money. Happy holidays to everyone. Happy Easter. Just happy day. Happy day. Talk to you soon.
Cause this is my road. Let's camera action. I'm ready to go. I'm never gonna give up. Fall down. I just gotta get up. Hey. Yeah, this is my road. Let's camera action. I'm ready to go. Way too long. Now you